Harvesting is pretty simple when it comes down to harvesting microgreens. You basically either use a very sharp knife or a pair of sharp scissors. You just grab a clump and you cut and you put it into your bin. It's fairly simple. Just, as you can see, just go through, cut, grab a clump, put it into your bin. You can harvest these and keep everything separate, or you can harvest everything and put it into a bin, like in my case where we're going to make a salad. One thing is you want to take care of when you're harvesting is not to pull up on the roots while you're cutting. You want to just grab the set and then cut below it and then put your set in. Sometimes you can pull the root right out of the soil and now you put a root into your salad. These greens here are grown indoors and they're grown in an organic coconut cure. So I dry harvest. When I dry harvest, everything just goes into the bin and then I package it. If you find the need to wash them, you can put these into a cold water bath and then run them through a salad spinner before packaging to clean off any dirt that might accumulate. Like for example, if you're growing outside, you'd want to run it through a cold bath and then run it through a salad spinner. Any water left on the greens tend to make them not last as long. So I try to harvest fresh and I get them into the refrigerator soon after the harvest. Keep them chilled. When you plant a seed, you either have two things happening. The seed hull stays with the root system, or the seed hull just gets discarded by the plant. With sunflowers and buckwheat, for example, but in this case we're showing you sunflowers, the seed pod or the shell will actually hold the leaves as they develop to the point where the seed leaves will be large enough where they discard the shell off the leaves. When you're harvesting microgreens, many times those seed pods or the shells are still on the leaves. So part of your process of your harvest is to remove the shells off the leaves gently prior to harvest. This can be a rather tedious thing to do because sometimes they are all over them. There are a lot of them. And sometimes there are very few. It's just kind of one of those curious things. But the last thing you want to do is chomp on a sunflower that has the shell in it. Just like if you're eating sunflower seeds, you're going to take off the sunflower shell before eating the inside of the meat that's inside of a sunflower seed. Not to mention the birds will do the same thing because they don't like to eat the hulls of the sunflower either. So in this case, what you want to do before you start cutting your sunflowers is to pick off all the shells off the leaves gently. You want to be careful because you can actually tear the leaves when you do this. See, on this plant here, this tray, there are very few of them. The previous tray had quite a few. It's all about timing when you want to harvest sunflowers. If you wait too long to harvest sunflowers, the second set of leaves will emerge. The second set of leaves actually have no flavor to them and actually have a little bit of furriness to them. So they're not very tasty and they're not very good as far as texture in the mouth. The cotyledons are the first leaves to emerge from the soil when the plant germinates. Because they are part of the seed's embryo, they are also known as the seed leaves and provide nutrients to the seedling until the true leaves unfurl and begin to photosynthesize. On a sunflower, these first leaves are the ones with all the flavor. The second set of leaves, the true leaves, are the ones that start collecting the sun's rays, but they also have the least amount of taste and texture, which most people enjoy about sunflowers. You wish to harvest just before the true leaves start to emerge. If you miss the time, you could actually pinch them off when you're doing a harvest, but can you imagine pinching off 1,000 of them? Not that I've ever done them. At least I haven't made that mistake more than once. And here's a harvesting tip for sunflowers. You want to harvest your sunflowers just when the first set of leaves emerge. Maybe just a little bit of the true leaves peeking out. If you let them grow too long, what you'll end up with is the true leaves will pop out also, as you can see here with 4 leaves. The second set of leaves, they tend to be without any flavor and a little furry, and they're not so great for texture. You, of course, could still feed these to your chickens. They will truly love you for feeding them sunflower microgreens in the middle of winter. These microgreens are almost ready to harvest. They look beautiful, don't they? Here are some growing issues related to overcrowding your mix. You want to start off small, like say for example 0.3 ounces, and then go from there on the smaller seed. Here's a place where the medium was too soggy, was sopping wet, and then when you plant your seeds, the seeds don't germinate because it's too wet. So you really want it damp, but you don't want it wet. And then here's another example where the medium was oversaturated during the growing time, where it had too much water in it and wasn't able to evaporate off or drain. So overwatering is just as bad as underwatering. And last is a good example of underwatering. If, for example, you forget a couple of days in a row, or maybe you thought you watered and you didn't water. But either way, they do need water. There's a very small root system here in a microgreen, and you're only talking about a 1/4 inch, a 1/2 inch of soil. So it doesn't take too much for it to dry out very quickly. As you've learned in the harvest, that you want to harvest at the optimum time for freshness of your microgreens, you also want to package them for the same considerations. You want them to last as long as possible in your refrigerator or walk-in cooler if you're going to give this to a customer. I have found that the clamshells, the plastic clamshells, which are recyclable, are a good way to store your microgreens. They give a little bit of air penetration to the container, so that way they have a chance to breathe. You could package these in an airtight container, but The lack of air movement can sometimes be a problem with dampness, and excessive dampness with the microgreens is not a good thing. Just as if you wish to wash them, you want to make sure you dry them very well in a salad spinner prior to packaging. As you can see here, the weight of the bin empty is 47 ounces, and then we weigh it with our salad mix in there. This gives us a basic idea of how much we got out of our harvest this time around. It also helps us figure out how many containers we're going to be able to package to the desired weight that you've agreed on with your customer. Or if you're just packaging them in general, it's a good idea to know how well you do on each harvest. The scale is 0 to the container size that we're using, and then we start to fill them up to the desired weight. This is a fairly simple thing to do, and it's just a repetition of it. You do the same thing if you're going to package individual microgreens such as sunflowers, which are a very popular thing to serve separately. The sunflowers are packaged in a smaller container, which I'm not doing at this particular harvest, but you can get different size containers also. The packages are then put into the bin so they can be carried to the labeling and also to go into the refrigerator until delivery. I used the Brother 700 thermal printer to print my labels for my containers, It's actually a pretty handy printer to use to label a lot of things. And the software is quite easy to use too. If you're harvesting this for your own personal use, you should label it with a date of harvest. Once you've harvested your greens, you can then take all your trays and bring them out to the compost pile. The interesting thing about this compost pile is many of the greens that I managed not to be able to grow indoors will grow out here in the compost pile. You just never know what kind of sprout up during the summer. I've had corn, I've kale, I've had mushrooms. It's just an amazing thing. The things that grow inside will grow outside. So once this compost pile has broken down completely, I'll then take it and move it to another part of the yard in which I can create a garden. Last year I created a rhubarb garden in which I can have rhubarb every year. Growing grasses as microgreens such as wheat and barley. Red winter wheat grain and barley seed is commonly used for wheatgrass and barley grass. These are also considered microgreens. These grasses can be fed directly to livestock as a whole, roots and greens, when grown without soil or a growing medium. Wheat and barley grass juice is an effective healer because it contains many minerals known to man and vitamins such as A, B complex, C and E and I and K. It is extremely rich in protein and contains 17 amino acids, the building blocks of protein. Wheat and barley grass juice contains up to 70% of chlorophyll, which is an important blood builder. Wheat and barley grass can be eaten just by chewing like a cow, but is best consumed by crushed in an auger-type juicer, either hand-cranked or powered. In this demonstration, we're measuring out 1 pound of barley seed for a 10 by 20 tray in which we're not going to be using a medium to grow into. In this case, the actual bottom layer of the seed is going to be the medium for the top layer of the seed. The advantages of doing it this way is that if you're feeding your grasses to livestock, the livestock can actually consume the whole plant, whereas humans would only cut the greens and then juice the greens or chew the greens. In here, as you can see, I bought the lids at a local hardware store and drilled them myself, and they seem to work fine. You can also buy commercial actual stainless steel screens that go into the lid covers or the lid bands and also work. Once you soak the seed for 12 hours minimum, you then rinse the seed and then put it on either on its side or in a dish rack in which the jar can sit at about a 60-degree angle. This allows the water to drain and not cause mold. You're going to do this every day, 3 days in a row, until all your seed is sprouted into the jar to the point where the jar is almost full. This method here works quite well. Even storing them on their side seems to work very well. You just wish to make sure you drain all the water out of it so there's not any standing water in the bottom of the jar that can cause mold. The advantage of growing without medium is that you could actually feed the entire plant to, say, your livestock. Humans wouldn't consume the root system. However, many people do just juice the greens and still grow it in this way. Some people feel that when you grow it in some type of a compost material, such as the coconut cure, that you actually get a sweeter tasting juice that still becomes quite the subjective opinion. If you're going to be growing your seed in a medium, you're going to want to half your weight for a 10 by 20 tray, so you should probably be at about 8 ounces of seed. It's all trial, tests, and trials, but you want to test it out and see how they fit. If you feel like you've had too much seed in the tray, then you go down an ounce and see how that does on your next run. It's all subject to how much they allow these seeds to sprout before you plant them in the tray. But by sprouting them ahead of time, this gives you the quickest boost to your growing, to the speed of your growing into the medium, or just into the tray. On the final day, just prior to planting, what you want to do is fill it out with water and then strain the water back out again. This gives them a good shot of water, so they're going to sit in your tray for the next couple of days without being watered. Video, we're using a 10 by 20 inch tray, 1 inch deep, perforated with holes on them. That is the black trays. Then the white trays are solid, that'll collect any kind of moisture or water that drips out of the tray. Whichever kind of tray you use to grow your greens or microgreens, you want to have them as a perforated tray. This gives you the opportunity for water to drain out, excess water to drain out of the tray and not allow your grains or your seeds to rot. So this is pretty simple. You just lay in the tray and then smooth it out so it's as evenly covered throughout the whole tray as possible. And then you just move on to your next tray. In this demonstration, we're doing 3 trays of barley. You can use any kind of tray that you want. People use trays they get at the dollar store, whatever you want to use. These particular trays I get from Johnny's Seeds up in Maine, and they have it's a very good product. Lasts a fairly long time. And these trays, they don't leach any chemicals into the seed, whereas there are some trays out there that do. And there's no reason to be eating really healthy if you're going to be using plastics that leach into your foods. When you're finished planting all your trays, you want to stack them on top of each other for at least a day, just to give them a sense that they've been actually having the weight upon them as if they were planted in the soil. This gives them a good chance to start sprouting and growing sooner than later. After 2 days of being in a stack, you want to then move them over to your growing space, whether it's your countertop or a table or on racks like I have them. In my space, I don't have good sunlight coming in, so I use artificial lighting as LED fluorescent light tubes that have 5,000 kelvins temperature. I think you don't need as many lights as this one here. And here I have 4 lights because this is for my other microgreens. I think they'd be just as happy under 1 or 2 LED bulbs. Each day you want to do is give them a good soaking of a mist. In the beginning, misting it is best because the seeds are very gentle and you don't want it to really disturb the position in the tray. So going over them with a hand mister like this one here or a pump action mister is going to be the best thing for it. Then I put these plastic trays on top and it helps keep the moisture in the tray and aids in their growing. They actually grow quite quickly under the plastic trays. They grow faster on the plastic trays than they do when I grow them without the plastic trays. Once they get to about this height, about 4 inches or so, it's about time that you want to start harvesting. Whether you're going to start juicing it, or if you're going to start giving it to your animals, or friends' animals, or even if you wish to sell the greens to local farms. Once they grow too tall, the ends will start turning brown, because they start exhausting the nutrients that are left in the grain pod. You might even be able to see some of the brown tips on the very ends, almost like split ends that some people may complain about. Happy juicing! Enjoy your greens!